Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Sasha Reade. I am actually the person that got to design this month's box, which is I think Papercraft Society number 36. So that's me there. You can't see my face because I can't tilt my camera that direction. And I apologize because this was going to be a live video for you. However, it's my daughter's birthday the day this video is coming out, and I knew life would be a bit too hectic for me, so I decided to pre-record it for you, and then that way you can craft along with me, and I will be reading the comments, replying to comments. Any questions you have, just put them down and I will respond to them, so don't worry. I will be there. I would just be also celebrating my daughter's birthday with her as well. So this month's box was really fun. CraftStash asked me a while ago if I would like a chance to design a box, and I thought, sure, sounds great. That would be fun. So I went alongside the idea of what my designs were for the CraftStash & Co brand. Now, if you saw this launch, this was also me. I got to design these. So when I came to doing the box, I really wanted to do the sort of same kind of thing. I really love layering dies. I think they're very multifunctional. You can do all sorts with them, and they're really a great item to have in your stash basically for a lifetime. So if you saw these, that's kind of the idea I was going for with this box. So in the box you'll have noticed 4 snowflake dies. Now these aren't as huge as the CraftStash & Co ones, but they're a nice tidy small size that you can do quite a lot with. There are plenty of ideas in the book that came with the kit that will give you lots of inspiration as well. But they are all designed to stack on top of one another, so you can get a gorgeous multi-layered look from them. So you can use them individually, or you can stack them together once you've die cut them out and use them as a bundle. You could mix and match, you don't have to do all 4. Now the smaller ones are sort of similar. They've got all different designs to them, but you can layer a bit with them as well if you like. And of course we have a little word die, word snow in there. And then this one here is really fun and I really love it. So there is a matching stamp, and I can't remember which one it is right now. I think it might be this one here. That you can either stamp it or you can use the die cut, which I think might be this one. Forgive me if I am wrong. I think it's this one. Yeah. So you can either use the die cut and die cut it out, or you can use the stamp and stamp it. So lots of versatility, which is what I really wanted. I wanted something that you can use every Christmas if you want. These are fantastic. They're the perfect little size for making ornaments for your tree if you want to do some hand decorations, if you want a nice fun little kids project. Quite easy to do. So for today's craft, I thought we could go ahead and make a variation of this card here on page 10. And I would show you how to do a shaker card. Shaker cards are my absolute favorite thing. I'm going to give you a few tips and tricks along the way, and we're going to slightly jazz up this version and make it have a little bit more oomph to it without having to do too much more than what we've already kind of done here. So all the measurements that you're going to need are in here, but I'm going to also use some backing layers. So let's get started and get crafting. So getting started, we're going to need a card base. I always use an A5 card, which is A4 cut in half, and then I take that and I just fold it in half to create an A6 card. That way I get more out of my supplies. I can make more cards. I can make basically double the cards that I would make if I was doing an A5 size card. So I've got my base there. I've got a sheet of A6 cardstock, which I'm going to trim down to be my panel on the top. I've got some scrap purple. This is all I've got left. This is my favorite color. This and the sort of fuchsia pink were my favorite. So this is kind of all I got left in my kit. But this is what I'm going to use for the snowflake. I've got my silver card, and I have got this pretty blue and purple sort of snowflake pattern. So getting started, we are going to cut all of our layers first and have them ready to go. Now I want to layer up my layers that are going to go on my card. I find that little bit of sparkle just adds something a bit extra to the card, gives it a little bit more character. Now obviously what you can do is use your glitter card first, cut your bases out, and then maybe die cut a star or two out of that glitter card before you stick it together as in layers, just to make the most of the glitter card. But for me today, for the sake of a video and keeping it down on time, I'm just going to use it as is. I've got heaps of glitter cardstock in my craft room anyways, so I'm not too worried. So we've got our card base ready to go. I'm going to cut my first layer, which is going to go on top of that. I'm going to cut this in half first, so I'm going to cut at 10.5. That makes my 2 equally the same size pieces here. This first one I'm going to take, and I'm going to just take off 2 centimeters off of that. So I've got 10.5, I'm just going to move it down to 10.3 and just take off the teensiest little sliver. Then I'm going to flip it the other way, and I'm going to go down 2 centimeters again and take off a little sliver. So my glitter cardstock is a little bit longer than my card base, so I'm actually going to take off 3 centimeters. Good thing I checked that. So I'm going to go down to 3 centimeters. And then hopefully that will be nice. Always check your layers just to make sure in case you cut something a little bit wonky or something wasn't quite right. And I just wanted to say as well, sometimes when you've folded your card, it can make it look like it's a lot narrower than it is. So you might want to take an extra millimeter off. And I apologize if I keep saying centimeters. I do mean millimeters. I do that all the time, so I'm very sorry. But you might want to take off an extra millimeter just to kind of have it match up a bit more, because that fold line does take up about a millimeter of space. So where are we here? We'll take off just another little sliver, and then I should have a nice, beautifully even edge all the way around my card. Now, do not toss these, keep them. These are so important because they are fantastic for use on lots of card ideas. If you watch my YouTube channel, you know that I have got a scraps jar which sits on my desk, just here, and I put every one of those little strips in there, and I promise you they will come in so handy. There are lots of videos on my channel that can share with you how to use up these little strips and how handy they can be. Right, we're going to do the next layer. So again, I'm going to cut this one exactly in half. And then I am going to take off 4 centimeters this time. And then 4 millimeters this time. And I know it's a bit annoying, but I love this kind of look. You can skip the layers altogether and just go with bog standard measurements that I've put in the book. Or if you're like me and you like layers, then you can go ahead and cut them down. So I'm just going to count down 4 millimeters and then trim it. I actually want the other end. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oops, I forgot I need to do that extra millimeter because I did take off the extra millimeter on that side. So I'll just go down 1 more. Trim that off, and then I'll get this beautiful little tiny detailed edge all the way around. And as I said before, feel free to cut a snowflake or 2 out of this glitter cardstock. You won't notice it. It'll be nice and hidden right underneath there. So you could go ahead and take that out of that before you glue it onto your card. So I've got my first set of layers ready. My next layer is going to be the panel that is going to hold our snowflake glitter card element. So I'm going to cut this to 8.5 by 12.8, which is the measurements I've given you in the book. Now my little glitter panel is going to be 2 centimeters bigger than that. So I want this to be 8.7 by 13. And then that way we've got a gorgeous little outline on that one, our gorgeous outline on there, and we can pop those on and you can still see our pattern paper around the edge of the card. So the next part of our card that we're going to work on is the snowflake that we're going to put in the middle of our shaker card. And for that, I'm going to cheat slightly. Now in my tutorial I used liquid glue, which is fine, but this time I'm going to use double-sided adhesive. So if you don't have double-sided adhesive sheets, double-sided tape will also work. Lots of us have some of this stuff lying around, just plain double-sided tape. All you need to do is just lay that down on the back of your piece of card and just do strips until you've kind of filled up enough space for your die cut to go. So if you want to do a snowflake, there's no point covering the whole thing. Just cover up where you're going to have your die cut or cut your cardstock to roughly that kind of shape, and then just apply the tape to the back. I'm going to use a solid piece just because I have it and it's nice and easy. I don't have to sit there faffing with little strips. I'm going to cut my cardstock down so it's a bit more reasonable size to work with, and then that way I'm also not wasting too much of my double-sided adhesive sheet. So I'm going to peel back that release paper until I expose the sticky stuff. Then I'm going to take my piece of cardstock, just lie it on the top, and then I'm going to place that back over and cut that out. First I will give it a little rub with a bone folder just to make sure that that's nice and stuck on there. Now I can see straight through, so I can just easily go ahead and cut around the little piece that I stuck in there, and then that way I'm wasting as little of this as possible, and I've got my piece ready to go. Then we can go ahead and die cut that out. Now if your machine is getting a bit old and the pressure isn't brilliant in your machine, then you may want to add a little bit of fun foam to the back of it just to give it a bit more elevation, but have that bit of squish so the die will cut through it. If your machine is fine, it should cut through on a couple passes. Just because I've got that extra layer, I usually go through once and then back through. You can see it's gone and cut it really nicely, and that will work perfect, and I can pop that off. Oops, it's wanting to pull the whole thing off. Got my little brush to help with releasing it. I'm gonna just go ahead and rub that on the back there. Okay, so mine it wasn't cooperating with me, so I'm just going to remove all these little bits. The quickest, easiest way to get rid of those middle bits is to just literally touch them with your finger, and you can pop them off really nice and easy, and then you can put them back on your scrap bit here that you're not going to use anymore. Now I'll leave this in my die until I'm ready to use it, purely because there's no release sheet stuck on there anymore. But really easy way to get these little bits out, just touch them. Okay, so that is all done and ready to go, and I'm just going to set that to the side. Next we're going to cut our snowflake into our panel. For this one I'm just going to use the most basic, biggest open die, just so it's less faff getting it out. You can use any of those dies, they will work. And I'm just going to plunk it straight on. You can have it whatever angle you want it to have, if you want it to go like that or like that, whichever you prefer. Okay, so then we've got it all die cut out and ready to go. So next we're going to go ahead and add on our sentiment onto our panel here. So I'm going to stick it in. So I'm going to go for Merry Christmas, and I will just line that up underneath my snowflake. Might give that a clean, it looks a bit red. I'm just going to offset those a little bit. Stick in my stamp platform to pick it up. And get my embossing ink. Don't forget, if you have an anti-static powder bag, to use that so you don't get any of your embossing powder sticking where you don't want it to go. I'm going to ink up my sentiment, and I usually do this twice if I'm using a stamp platform, just so I get a really good coverage of ink. Got my little embossing tray there, ready to go. I'll just pick that up. Take the embossing powder that comes with the kit, and I'm going to sprinkle that onto my embossed area, my stamped area I should say. So now we can go ahead and melt that and heat set it. Okay, so now we've got our sentiment on there. We can go ahead and stick our vellum to the back on here. Now you can go ahead and measure it and cut a nice little square. I'm just going to roughly cut it with scissors because I'm not bothered. And now I've got that ready to go on my shaker card. So I'm just going to add a bit of glue in and around the snowflake to hold that on. And then I'm just going to take something heavy and put it on until it dries for a couple seconds. A nice big acrylic block will do. Now before we add any foam to the back, we want to go ahead and put our snowflake inside the center here. Otherwise we will really struggle to get it in when we've got the dimension on the back of this piece of card. So we can take our snowflake here, which has got all the bits out of it. And actually I'm thinking we can probably just slot it right in on top. Push it down and give a little poke to each of these little holes and get that stuck straight down onto my vellum, and then I don't have to do too much torturous trying to get it out, I hope. And I can just push that nice and down into those spaces, and that double-sided sticky adhesive will stick beautifully onto that vellum. Now if you've run out of all your vellum, you could use any packaging. You could take, if you're not planning to use the stamps too much more, I guess, you could take that bit of acetate there and use that on your shaker card if you needed, or any toy packaging, usually like cosmetic packaging, you could use any of that. Now I'm just going to give it a rub from the back, and that will make sure it's nice and properly stuck to that vellum, and that snowflake is going nowhere on the other side. So can you see that vellum going just ever so slightly more see-through? So when I give that a firm rub, I'm just getting a nice sort of dark purple color coming through, and that's showing that my adhesive is nice and stuck down onto the vellum. There we go. Got that all stuck in there. Now if we wanted a bit of extra glitter, before I stuck that down, I could have then taken a sparkle pen and added some sparkle onto that snowflake and stuck that in. Now if there's any further decorating you want to do to this front piece, you need to do it now before we go and finish off the card and add those sequins in. I went ahead and die cut out one of the little snowflakes, and I am going to glue that right in the middle of my snowflake on here. Now when doing a shaker card, I really dislike putting my back panel directly onto my foam tape behind, mainly because I can never line it up straight and I never get it correct. So what I tend to do is I cut myself another square, just like I did with the vellum, that I can then stick onto the foam once I have done doing my sprinkling of my sequins in there. And that way it's just much easier for me to put the card together and not have it spill everywhere and not make a big mess. So I'm going to get a piece of scrap card. Because my sequins are white, I'm going to use a darker piece of card so that they stand out and don't get lost behind it. Right, so I've got my little panel ready to go. Now we can put down some foam tape. So I'm going to take, I think this is the CraftStash Basics foam tape. It works great, it's a really good thickness, but what we can do is we can just trim it in half. If it's too fat for any of your projects, just trim it down. So I like how the width of it, because that will work for the rest of the shaker card, but for the top bit where I'm going to go around my snowflake, I want it to be a bit thinner so it doesn't poke out. So you can go in and around the snowflake, but I find it doesn't make that much difference, so I'm just going to go along the edge of it, making sure that my foam tape isn't going over the edge of my little panel, but it can cover that bit a little bit. It's not going to show because the vellum is nice and kind of foggy looking. You want to make sure you've got no gaps around the edge that the sequins could slip through. So as long as the gaps aren't big, you should be okay. And I'm going to take my sequins, which you get a lot in this envelope. It's pretty massive. I'm just going to cut it. I can kind of cut a little corner and then I can pour them in. So get my sequins in there. And we take our little panel and just pop that on the back there. And it doesn't matter if some of that adhesive is showing, it just means you don't have to put adhesive there when we flip it over. So there is our shaker element, and you can actually see the little snowflakes a bit in there, which is quite fun. Now I'm just going to line this edge up here with some of the foam, and then that way it's nice and level and even. You can take those release sheets off, and now we can get it ready to go onto our panel. Because we've got such a small difference in size, I'm going to put liquid adhesive all over the back of the whole entire thing, so I've got a little bit of wiggle room to maneuver this and manipulate it before it gets stuck down permanently. There's our top shaker panel done, and now we can stick our layers together. Okay, so those layers are now nice and stuck on the card. We can go ahead and add our middle layer, our top final fun layer, and stick that right in the middle of the card. And there we go. We've got a gorgeous, cute little Christmas card that shakes, that you can gift to someone at Christmas time. Don't forget to label the back of your card as well, to say that you made it, so that people know it's a nice, beautiful handmade card. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I hope you had fun, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this kit. Take care. Bye.